And let's continue with Bird Rock from the Golden Harp, from the Grey King. Will and Bran have just gone through a door in the rock, and Will's old one instincts have kicked in. Also, Cathal the dog is with them. They are now watching a comet, and Will is starting to think, wish upon a star in his head. Wish on a falling star, Bran said soft in his ear. All around them, the meteors briefly dived and vanished as tiny points of stardust in the long travel of their clouds struck the airy halo of the earth, burned bright, and were gone. I wish, said Will fiercely in his mind. I wish, oh, I wish. And all the bright starlit sky was gone. In a flicker of time they could not catch, and darkness came around them so fast that they blinked in disbelief at its thick nothingness. They were back on the staircase beneath Bird Rock, with stone steps under their feet, and a curved stone balustrade smooth on the sightless touch of their hands. And as Will stretched out one hand groping before him, he found no blank wall of stone there to bar his way, but a free open space. Slowly, faltering, he went on down the dark stairway, and Bran and Cathal followed him. Then, very gradually, faint light began to filter up from below. Will saw a glimmer from the walls enclosing them, then the shape of the steps beneath his feet, then, appearing round a curve in a long tunneling stairway, the bright circle that marked its end. The light grew brighter, the circle larger. Will felt his steps become quicker and more eager, and mocked himself, but could not help it. Then instinct caught him into caution, and on the last few steps of the staircase before the light he stopped. Behind him he heard Bran and the dog stop too at once. Will stood listening to his senses, trying to catch the source of warning. He saw, without properly seeing, that the steps on which he stood had been carved out of the rock with immense care and symmetry, perfectly angled, smooth as glass, every detail as clear as if the rock had been cut only the day before. Yet there was a noticeable hollow in the center of each step, which could only have been worn by centuries of passing feet. Then he ceased to notice such things, for awareness caught at him out of the deepest corner of his mind, and told him what he must do. Carefully, Will pushed up the left sleeve of his sweater as far as the elbow, leaving the forearm bare. On the underside of his arm shone the livid scar that had once been accidentally burned there like a brand, the sign of the light, a circle quartered by a cross. In a deliberate, slow gesture, half defensive, half defiant, he raised this arm crooked before his face, as if shielding his eyes from bright light, or warding off an expected blow. Then he walked down the last few steps of the staircase and out into the light. As he stepped to the floor, he felt a shock of sensation like nothing he had ever known. A flare of white brilliance blinded him and was gone. A brief, tremendous thunder dazed his ears and was gone. A force, like a blast wave from some great explosion, briefly tore at his body and was gone. Will stood still, breathing fast. He knew that beneath his singular protection he had brought them through the last door of the high magic, a living barrier that would consume any unsought intruder in a gasp of energy as unthinkable as the holocaust of the sun. Then he looked into the room before him, and for a moment of illusion thought he saw the sun itself. It was an immense cavernous room, high-roofed, lit by flaring torches, thrust into brackets on the stone walls, and hazy with smoke. The smoke came from the torches, yet at the center of the floor burnt a great glowing fire, alone, with no chimney or fireplace to contain it. It gave no smoke at all, but burned with a white light of such brilliance that Will could not look straight at it. No intense heat came from this fire, but the air was filled with the aromatic scent of burning wood, and there was the crackling, snapping sound of a log fire. Will came forward past the fire, beckoning Bran to follow, then stopped abruptly as he saw what lay ahead. Hazy, at the end of the chamber, 3 figures sat, in 3 great thrones that seemed to be fashioned out of smooth, grey-blue Welsh slate. They did not move. They appeared to be men, dressed in long hooded robes of differing shades of blue. One robe was dark, one was light, and the robe between them was the shifting greenish-blue of a summer sea. Between the three thrones stood two intricately carved wooden chests. At first there seemed to be nothing else in the huge room, but after a moment of gazing, Will knew that there was movement in the deep shadows beyond the fire, in the darkness all around the three illuminated lords. These were the bright figures on a dark canvas, lit to catch the eye. Beyond them, in the darkness, other things of unknown nature lurked. He could tell nothing of the nature of the three figures beyond sensing a great power, nor could his senses, as an old one, penetrate the surrounding darkness. It was as if an invisible barrier stood all around them, through which no enchantment might reach. Will stood a little way before the thrones, looking up. The faces of the three lords were hidden in the shadows of their hooded robes. For a moment there was silence, broken only by the soft crackle of the burning fire. Then out of the shadow a deep voice said, "We greet you, Will Stanton, and we name you by the sign. Will Stanton, Sign Seeker." "Greetings," Will said in a strong and clear voice, as he could muster, and he pulled down his sleeve over his scarred arm. "My lords," he said, "it is the Day of the Dead." "Yes," said the figure in the lightest blue robe. His face seemed thin in the shadows of his hood, the eyes gleaming, and his voice was light, sibilant, hissing. "Yes." Echoes whispered like snakes out of the dark, as if 100 other little hissing voices came from nameless shapes behind him, and Will felt the small hairs rise on the back of his neck. Behind him he heard Bran give a muffled, involuntary moan, and knew that horror must be creeping like a white mist through his mind. Will's strength as an old one rebelled. He said in quick and cold reproach, "My lord?" The horror fell away, like a cloud whisked off by the wind, and the lord in the light blue robe softly laughed. Will stood there, frowning at him, unmoved, a small, stocky boy in jeans and sweater, who nonetheless knew himself to possess power worthy of meeting these three. He said, confident now, "It is the Day of the Dead, and the youngest has opened the oldest hills through the door of birds, and has been let pass by the eye of the high magic. I have come for the Golden Harp, my lords." The second figure in the sea blue robe said, "And the Raven boy with you?" "Yes." Will turned to Bran, standing hesitantly near the fire, and beckoned him. Bran came forward very slowly, feet as unwilling as if they swam against treacle, and stood at his side. The light from the torches on the walls shone in his white hair. The lord in the sea blue robe leaned forward a little from his throne. They glimpsed a keen, strong face and a pointed grey beard. He said astonishingly, "Careful." At Bran's side the white dog stood erect and quivering. He did not move an inch forward, as if obeying some inner instruction that told him his place, but his tail waved furiously from side to side, as it never waved for anyone but Bran. He gave a soft, small whine. White teeth glinted in the hooded face. "He is well named, well named." Bran said jealously, in sudden fierce anxiety, "He is my dog!" Then he added, rather muffled, "My lord." Will could feel the alarm in him at his own temerity, but the laughter from the shadows was kindly. "Never fear, boy. The high magic would never take your dog from you. Certainly the old ones would not either. And the dark might try, but would not succeed." He leaned forward suddenly, so that for an instant the strong bearded face was clear. The voice softened, and there was an aching sadness in it. "Only the creatures of the earth take from one another, boy. All creatures but men more than any. All creatures but men more than any. Life they take, and liberty, and all that another man may have. Sometimes through greed, sometimes through stupidity, but never by any violation but their own. Beware your own race, Bran Davies. They are the only ones who will ever harm you in the end." Dread stirred in Will as he felt deep sadness in the voice. for there was a compassion in it directed solely at Bran, as if the Welsh boy stood at the edge of some long sorrow. He had a quick sense of a mysterious closeness between these two, and knew that the lord in the sea-blue robes was trying to give Bran strength and help without being able to explain why. Then the hooded figure leaned abruptly back, and the mood was gone. Will said huskily, "Nevertheless, my lord, the rights of that race have always been the business of the light, and in quest of them I claim the Golden Harp." The soft-voiced lord in the lightest robe, who had spoken first, swiftly stood. His cloak swirled round him like a blue mist. Bright eyes glinted from the thin, pale face, glimmering in the hood. Answer the three riddles as the law demands, old one. You and the white crow, your helper there, and the harp shall be yours. But if you answer wrong, the doors of rock shall close, and you shall be left defenceless on the cold mountain, and the harp shall be lost to the light forever. And we will pause there.